Welcome to shul.com. We are learning from the Chok L'Yisrael, Yom Hamishi, Parashat Vayetze, and we are looking at the Gemara. It's a very interesting Gemara that's pertinent to the third Beit HaMikdash, the second Beit HaMikdash, the first Beit HaMikdash, and what's going to be in the future when the Mashiach comes and Eliyahu and Nabi Zechulatov. Let's take a look. It's on Zevahim 61b, Samech Aleph Amud Bet. Let's take a look. It says Tanan Hatam in the Mishnah. Over there, that's talking about Midot 35b. It's brought down. Shalu bnei hagolah hosifu alav dalad amot min hadarom v'dalad amot min hama'arav k'min gema. So originally in Masechet Midot it says that the first temple Mizbeach that Shlomo built was 28 amot by 28 amot, as you see here in red, and then they added another 4 amot to the south and to the west, to Darom and to the Ma'arav. You could see that area right here. It's like a 90-degree angle, and the Gemara tells us it looks like the Greek gamma. The gamma letter is right there. That's still that shape, and you could see it there. Obviously, it's turned in the other way. And so they extended from 28 amot, from Kowach, to 32 to live. Why was that? Let's take a look. My ta'ama, Amar Rav Yosef, Mishum de lo safek. They asked the reason why. Rav Yosef says because the original 28 by 28 was not sufficient. Amar le Abaye answers him, Hashta, it says in regards to the first temple, that Judah and Israel were plentiful, just like the sand that's on the banks of the sea. Safek, and then when it came to the second temple, it says in Ezra bet dash samech dalet kol kahal ke'echad arba ribo, that in the second temple there were much less people in it. It was a total of 42,000 people in the second temple. So how is it that they had more korbanot getting done on a 28 by 28 than a 32 by 32? It wouldn't make sense based on these pisukim. So he says there in the first temple, Esh shel shamayim misaitan. Hacha in Esh shel shamayim misaitan. So he said in the first temple, the fire from the heavens came down and consumed the Evarim, Pedarim, the Korbanot, while in the second they actually had to light it. Rav Ayer Kaplan actually has a very, very interesting, intriguing way of how he understood the fire coming down from heaven. When I saw this for the first time, it really blew me away because it makes a lot of sense. Well, generally, I always thought that it would just be like a little fire that they waited for, that they came down and ate it, and that the fire on the Mizbeach stayed there all the time. That was actually the Mizbeach that they had in the Mishkan. The fire and the flame always stayed burning. And even when they covered it with a copper cover, when they would cover it with the leather pieces in order to travel with the Mizbeach, the fire never went out, even though there was no oxygen for it, which was another miracle within the miracle that the fire never went away. From the original time that it came down from Nadav and Abihu, when they did the Ish Zara, a fire came down during that time of the inauguration. It stayed even when they covered it, and that stayed all the way along until they set the Mizbeach up. Later on, Menashe and the Navi ends up taking out the fire of the first temple, which Shlomo did. Now, Rav Ayer Kaplan said, how did it look when the flame came down? That it actually was a lightning bolt that would strike every time a korban was there. So you could imagine the Kohen going up and putting them there, and everybody waiting patiently, and boom, a lightning strike came, absorbed and burnt everything to a crisp, and a little flame of a smoke, a little arrow of smoke would go up as a stick all the way up perfectly, even when it was extremely windy. When you figure in the way Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan says it, it makes the miracle stands out much, much more. So that was in the first temple, but in the second temple they didn't have that. The second temple they had to light it up by themselves, and it had to burn, and had to wait for it to burn. So they didn't have that extra miracle. Ki ata Rabin Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi Mishum bar kapara Shitin hosifu meikara sabun mizbeach adama shu atum ba'adama. So when they expanded the altar over here, the Mizbeach, by 4 amot in both places, they ended up covering the 2 shitin that are here. And the shitin are supposed to look, according to the Rambam, like nostrils. So it had two of them. You would always put in their wine, and on Sukkot was the only time that you actually put in water in there. לבסוף, סבור שתייה כאכילה, מים מזבח אדמה שהוא מחובר באדמה, שלא יבנהו לא על כיפים. Okay, so he said later on, they concluded that just like these shitin were still there, and the wine or the water would go into it, but they concluded that just like when you put a korban on the mizbeach, it had to be burned and consumed, so too it was the same thing in regards to the wine or the water, that it had to be on the mizbeach and being consumed in that same way. Just like the shitiyah, the drinking was like the eating, meaning the drinking of the wine. The libation was the same like the eating of the mizbeach. Just like the mizbeach has to be adama and connected to the ground, that you were not allowed to build it on arches like you see in Jerusalem, and even on the underground tunnels you have all these arches. The mizbeach could not have had an arch underneath it, and no types of tunnels that could be under it. It had to be connected into ground and soil. Interestingly enough, everyone also had to be grounded, meaning when you were in the Beit HaMikdash, you were not allowed to wear no socks, no shoes. Everyone had to be barefoot in order to attach themselves into the stone, the marble, the granite, all that was there on the floor. Every human being that was there needed to be barefoot and have themselves grounded into the Beit HaMikdash. It's interesting, not part of the Gemara here, but the Kohen Gadol was not allowed to do the Ibur HaChodesh, to add another month into the year when they voted on that from the rabbis and the Lishkat HaGazit and the Sanhedrin. Why was that? It's actually very interesting, because the Kohen Gadol was the one who had to stay on Yom Kippur the entire day in the Beit HaMikdash, and he had to do a full service. It's very detailed. It's difficult. You got to dip in the mikveh, out of the mikveh, changing clothing. Now, if they're going to add another month and do Ibur HaChodesh, what ends up happening? Instead of having the holidays in September, when it's still a little bit of the summer weather, it ends up going to October and can even go late into October. Now, what happens with that is that it ends up getting colder. Remember, you're in Jerusalem, you're on the mountains. It's cold, it's windy, the stone gets freezing cold. Now, the Kohen Gadol's got to stand on that the whole day. So he had a little nega in that. He could not sit in on voting on that, because if it was up to him, you never add another month. I'd rather you do it towards the end of the summer. It's still a little warm, it's still more comfortable. So they never included him. It's very interesting to note that, because Kohen Gadol was the only one who knew Shema Meforash. He was the one who's going Kodesh Kadoshim. He is a pretty high authority. But the Hachamim understood that if he had a nega, if he had something that was going to affect his decision, we had to keep him out of this discussion, and we can't allow him to vote in on it, which is very important. When you're doing Devarim Shebakodesh, and there is a nega, what's a board, a committee, you're sitting in a place where something's going to affect the way that you're going to do your service. It's probably better to take a step back. I've brought this up on many committees and boards in the past, that certain individuals should not vote. Just like the Kohen Gadol didn't vote on something that was pertinent to him, that had to be done from the other groups, even though the Kohen Gadol is the most respected and he's on a tremendous level in Kedusha. This is a very important lesson to learn from the Kohen Gadol in his avodah in the Beit HaMikdash. Let's continue. Amar Rab Yosef, Lav haynu hadetanya vayachinu tamizbeach al mechanotav shehigiu lesof midotav. So it says here that they sent this was brought in Ezra 3:3, that they set the Mizbeach upon its original basis, because it never got destroyed. Which means even when they destroyed the top layer, they built the second Beit HaMikdash right on top of the existing locations which were visible. That from the original, it's only 72 years after the Chorban Habayit that Ezra came back and built it. Now it's also brought down. It says that in all of the writings, the Borei Olam made the individual wise to know how to do the works and how to build it, the temple. Ela Amar Rav Yosef Kara Ashkach Vedarash. Rav Yosef had a different understanding, and he brings a pasuk from Devrei Yamim Aleph Kaf Bet Dash Aleph. Vayomer David Zehu Bet Hashem HaElohim B'Zeh Mizbeach LaOlam Yisrael Ki Bayit Ma Bayit Shishim Amma Af Mizbeach Shishim Amma. He brings a pasuk stating that it wasn't an issue to extend or the location of or how big the Mizbeach was, because you were able to do the Mizbeach anywhere within the 60 Amma by 60 Amma of the Beit HaMikdash. Meaning the Mizbeach could have been in any location they wanted within the Beit HaMikdash. And some even bring down that you can have two Mizbeachs in there. Bishlama bet min kara tzurato el Mizbeach min hayadeh. So the Gemara says, so regards to the location and the shape, they knew because the foundation of the old one was still there. But had they know the exact location, El Amar Rabbi Elazar, Ra'u Mizbeach Panui, U'Michael Hasan HaGadol Omed Makrib Alav. So when they got there, certain individuals obviously saw the angel of Michael, and he was there being Makrib Korbanot. So when they saw that spiritual form of the angel, they understood that was the place, and they were able to see it. Plus, they saw the foundation, they saw locations, and they were able to put it together. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Ra'u Mizbeach Banui, U'Michael Tzagado Omed Makrib Alav. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha Amar, Efro Shel Yitzchak Ra'u Shemunach Be'oto Makom. So another opinion from Rabbi Yitzchak says no, they saw the ashes of Yitzchak's, not Yitzchak Avinu. According to one opinion, Shibulei Likat, I believe it was the ashes of Yitzchak, and that's a whole discussion of the Hayat HaMetim, the Tal, and the Berachan Da'amidah Baruch Ata Hashem Hayat Metim. But the normal interpretations that are understood from here is that when Avraham Avinu burned the Ayil, the ashes, that mound was visible, and so they knew the location because the Mizbeach was built on the exact location that Avraham did the Akedat Yitzchak. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani Amar Mikol Habayit Kulo Hirichu Reach Ketoret Misham Hirichu Reach Evarim. Now he gives you another opinion. He tells you that in the entire Beit HaMikdash you still had the scent of the Ketoret at that time, but in the area of the Mizbeach you smelled the burned animals, the limbs. You go to a butcher shop, you know that smell, that you smell of the meat. That smell was still pertinent, still available in that location. Amar Rabba Bar Hanna Amar Rabbi Yochanan. This is a very interesting part, and this is what we came to kind of look into. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, there were three prophets that came with them from the exile into Israel when they rebuilt the temple. Echad shehid lahem ala mizbeach. ואחד שהעיד להם על מקום המזבח, ואחד שהעיד להם שמקריבים אף על פי שאין בית. It's unbelievable. So when the three prophets came, they testified on three different things, and there's a mahloket which we're going to get into. But one testified to them about the exact location, ala mizbeach, where it needs to be. The second one was on the mekom of the mizbeach, so the location and then the size and the measurements of the Mizbeach, and one testified to them shemakribim afal pishein bait, that you could bring korbanot even if you didn't build the Beit HaMikdash yet, which is very interesting. So we had the prophets. Obviously, we need to know the location. That's very important. We need to know the measurements, and that you could bring a korban. The reason why this is also interesting is because we just previously said that you can build the Mizbeach anywhere within the 60 by 60 amot. We today know, for the most part, pretty accurately where the second Beit HaMikdash 60 amot by 60 amot are and where the shapes are. And there's a lot of diagrams and a lot of individuals in Israel and yeshivot that are studying this inside to know the exact location. So technically it could be anywhere. So really the Mekom Mizbeach and Ala Mizbeach is important, but this is the key. And furthermore, the Korban Sibur of Pesach, you can bring Afal Pisha Temei Metim. It's not brought down in this Gemara, but a Korban Sibur, even if everybody is Tamei Met, which is the rule of today, people are born in hospitals or people are born in locations at Temei Metim, everyone is that. But that's Korban Yachid. When it comes to Korban Sibur, it's okay. So Korban Pesach as a Korban Sibur, it's quite possible that we are going to bring the first Korban, be a Korban Pesach, without a Beit HaMikdash. And because it's a Korban Sibur, it's allowed, and the locations could be okay because you're within the 60 amot by 60 amot. Even if it's not the exact location, it could still possibly be okay. This is not halakha l'maaseh, just a discussion on it. B'matnita tana Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov omer shel shanavim alu imahem min hagola echad she'id lahem al mizbeach v'al mekom mizbeach. So he has a different interpretation. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, he says that one testified to them about the size, the shape, the measurements, the other one about the location, and one testified to them that you could bring that you could bring the korbanot even when you don't have a Beit HaMikdash, you can even set up a Mizbeach and do this. And then he says, furthermore, one of them testified that the Torah is now going to be written in Ashurit as opposed to Ivrit, and that's a whole discussion in of itself. So if you see from here, it's quite possible that Korbanot could be put together in a Mizbeach on a Har HaBayit even before we build the Beit HaMikdash, and even if people are Teme'em Etim. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen v'Amen.